Good evening and salutations, my GH fans. Julian. You know, I think even the most diehard Julian fan saw this episode and was just like, what the F am I watching? I think at this point we all know that Julian has been going downhill for a very long time. I liked Julian when he first came in. At least when I saw him come in. I liked the character right away. Over time they just... I don't know if because they just had to find a way to show Sonny being so much more better than Julian. I don't know what the case is. But for whatever odd reason, that are clearly beyond my comprehensions, they just said, screw it. So we get to what I like to call the end of the road. And Julian is bleeding out. Sonny's like, stop. Julian is like, why don't you just shoot me? Well, why would he do that? He could just wait till you just bleed to death. I mean, this way he doesn't really have to incriminate himself too much, and he doesn't have to really waste any ammo on you. So, why? Sonny is like, why don't you do something for once in your miserable life and help me take down Cyrus? Julian is like, well, the minute I do that, I'm dead. Julian, you have kids. Why is this even a question? Certain things that Julian does, I wouldn't sit there and say I give him a pass. But I try to see things from at least two different perspectives, and I try to at least understand where he's coming from, even if I don't agree with it. Sonny's like, listen, help me take down the bigger threat. Julian's like, well, I'll do this. I'll do it. Only if once this is done, you spare my life. Christ, Julian. I just, at that point, I was like, I was holding out one spark of hope. One spark of hope that Sonny's words will get through. Listen, I get that there are actual people that really do not like Sonny. I accepted that because he's not a perfect person. He's not a perfect man. But even the most hater that doesn't like Sonny was like, bro, I don't even like this guy. And he's making a ton of sense. So what does Julian do? Well, now we're just going to just sink to the floor. He fakes like he's dead. And then at the end, he tries to, when Sonny lowers his guard, he tries to, take advantage of the situation and take the gun from him and does his struggle. And I'm just like, bro, all this effort and all this energy could have just been spent on far better things. Not Julian. Nope. Not a good old boy Jules. Nope. He just had to just be the most scumbaggiest. I can't even think of words for him, but he just had to be a scumbag right up into the end. Just right up into the end. And of course, they're both standing there and they do that duel where the gun goes off and we don't know who got shot, even though we clearly do. So Julian gets shot and he finally falls to the ground. And, for whatever reason, I was so captured up into this scene that I didn't realize that this bridge is in the most poorest conditions ever. And, when he drops down and Sonny checks on him, of course it's like, you just had to go down like the low life that you were. He didn't say that, but that's pretty much what I gather from what he said. So he's down. Jason gets to the bridge. Right as Jason gets to the bridge, this whole damn thing collapses. Now I'm just, I'm not gonna lie, I'm just engrossed in the scene, and the slow motion and everything like that. I was like, wait, what? What? And granted, I looked at my phone a little bit and it said tragedy, whatever happens, and I didn't read it because I'm like, I'm not doing spoilers. At this point, Sonny and Julian both go off the edge. So now it's literally the definition of Cliffhanger Friday. Just wow. So great. This episode was so great. Even we're gonna get to the filler part because let's be honest, it was filler. Meanwhile, you got Jason that's detained, Buttercup, and Diane does exactly that. Works her magic. The officer felt like he could have challenged it, but once he saw the security footage, he realized that Jason being there and doing what he did literally saved more lives than, he saved lives by what he was doing, and, he was in self-defense. So, it worked out in his favor, second. This is, one second. Sorry about that. That song was just a little too depressing. But this is, I always sit there and think of poor Charles and the cops or whatever, and that, always deal with Jason and Sonny, the lesser of two evils. As bad as Sonny is, he's not a drug person, and, usually 9 times out of 10, he's usually, whoever he's going up against is a hell of a lot worse. And that scene kind of just proved it a little bit in some sort of ways, if that makes any sense. With that being said, let's go with Cyrus, Martin Gray, and Laura. This was another great scene. When Cyrus tells, Laura, hey, listen, I'm your sister. I mean, I'm half your brother or whatever, and, Laura's stunned a little bit, but, she kind of just gets over it, and then we get into this real backstory with Cyrus. Now, listen, this guy just killed, he only really killed, 2 people, which is still bad, and I don't want to sit there and take away that it was still bad, even though his character was a filler. It was still bad. But with that being said, he had kind of, his story was kind of tragic a little bit. His story was tragic. He gets into it with his brother, and they go back and forth. And, it gets into Cyrus' life of not being able to adjust well, and them having to move, they had to move from Port Charles somewhere else. At some point, they get to where Cyrus accidentally kills his dad. And he's like, it was an accident. I didn't mean to do it. We had a horrible fight. There's things I couldn't take back, and I needed to get away. He was like, it was an accident. I was a teenager. And I'm not gonna lie, I was like, even when Martin Gray was like, I don't believe you, and Mama didn't believe you either, and I was like, I believe him. I'm not gonna lie, I literally believed him. I mean, you can tell by the look in his face, the emotions that he would, the emotion that he had, I believed him, and it just kind of led him down his path. He got kicked out. He barely got his GED. He hung out with the wrong crowd. He made something of himself. He became a drug kingpin or whatever. So I don't know exactly how much of a made. But my point is that he had a rough start, and he built himself up. Not in the most greatest way, but he built himself up. And, this is where, Martin was like, you always try to pass yourself off as the good guy. He stepped in when Martin couldn't handle the bills that, his mother was accumulating, adding up or whatever. And Cyrus is there to, help out with that. He was there to be a savior for his mother. He was there to be a savior for General Hospital. Always trying to make himself look like he was the savior. Now let's be clear about General Hospital. Even after, they were able to save General Hospital, with that lawsuit, it wasn't looking too good. I mean, don't get me wrong, they probably could have chose anyone else to save that hospital, but they did need somebody to save that hospital. Like, Nell's suit was going to ruin them. And he stepped in. Now, granted, there could have probably been several other choices, but the point is, he stepped in. For his own nefarious purposes, but the point is, he stepped in. Because I know there's always counter-arguments against that, but, it is what it is. He did try his best to step in, and granted, he's getting something out of it. I don't know. I find myself actually defending this guy, and I feel so bad about that, because he did try to kill his own sister. Granted, he didn't know, but I don't know. My point is that I believed him. At some point, his mother... One second. Yep, this is what happens when you have long eyelashes. At some point, their mother wakes up. That's the brothers. The mother wakes up. And, Martin is there to kind of calm her down or whatever. It was humming cake. That's what I actually got to try. He was like, still your birthday and everything like that. And then Cyrus steps in. He's like, I'm here too. And here's the thing. Throughout this story that Martin spent there telling, I felt like Laura was somewhat sympathizing with Cyrus. I mean, don't get me wrong. She's still mad as hell for what happened with the floating rib, for her getting shot, all of it. But I felt like in that moment, all the stuff that was happening, I felt like she did feel something for Cyrus. How at one point they were getting too loud and she tried to calm them both down. So great. And previews, I saw Laura seemed like she was sitting there trying to talk to Cyrus and, kind of like help him out a little bit. Like, being civil to him. Which is weird, but, the story must have got to her. Because it got to me. And so what else? Okay. Jordan and Curtis. Curtis done had enough. And here's the thing. I know there may be some people, when they watch this clip on, I was going to say SoapNet, on YouTube or whatever, and some people are going to sit there and side with Jordan, being like, you can't sit there and tell your husband every aspect of your job, because, it's your job, and he's not part of the force. But what Jordan did, this wasn't like, like government approved or anything. Like, this wasn't like sanctioned or anything like that. This was her doing this on her own. And, throughout the argument, throughout this whole argument, all I felt like she did was make excuses. I was doing this to protect you. I wanted this all fall on me. This all started with me, and yada, yada, yada. And, Curtis was like, yo, you took away my choice. And this is what you've been doing for a while, is constantly taking away my choices. Not including me in this. Watching me beat myself up every day. Because the thing was, it wasn't so much just the cover-up that he was upset with. It was the lying by omission. The lying to him. Not even lying by omission. The lying to him is what really got him upset. And I agree with him. All Jordan did was just make excuses for a good hour of this episode, and it just beep, 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 meant absolutely nothing. And, at this point, Curtis was like, yo, listen, I'm tired of it. And he just walked off. And you see Jordan sitting there crying and everything like that. And I'm like, I really don't feel sorry for you. You made this mess. And at any point in time, you could have chose to include him. But you want to sit there and had this complex of, I can do this all by myself. It's like she just kind of just totally just threw out the whole, the whole marriage thing, like, just as a, as a unit, just, no, I'm just going to make decisions for him. So no, I don't really feel sorry for her at all. And last thing I'm going to sit there and talk about that I think that happened in this episode was the Jocelyn and Carly stuff. Because here's the thing. This is all filler. Jocelyn is at this point questioning her lifestyle, guards, she had a normal life, and everything. And I felt like Jocelyn was... I couldn't tell if she was holding some stuff back or trying not to say too much that would hurt Carly. And this isn't anything new. Sam asked her this, Sam was sitting there talking to her before. Well, listen to her vent about, what her life is like and how it's weird and it's different and not asking Sonny any questions and knowing and not knowing. And honestly, to tell you the truth, at the end of this conversation, at the end of this whole hour, nothing happened. All she said was, I'm staying here, I love you, and I love our life, and I wouldn't change it. And that was it. And, Carly asked a question, and I don't know if this is supposed to irk me a little bit. So Carly's like, just tell me that I didn't drag you into this life and, of chaos and violence and stuff like that. And I don't remember what Jocelyn said, but she said something that was very, Hallmark card, like, something that you would hear in a Hallmark movie. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, good save or whatever, and they laugh and whatever. But I felt like when Carly asked that question, when Carly was like, please tell me, just tell me that I didn't drag you into this life or whatever, I was like, Carly, are you just saying this for your own, just to try to clear your conscience? Like, is that what it is? Is it to help you sleep better at night for the choices that you made for your children? Because at the end of it, that's really what it came down to. Let's put a scenario where Jax was there. Yeah. No. Sonny was there. Put that same scenario. Sonny was there. He was at the floating rib with Jocelyn, or I don't know, they was out getting a milkshake at Kelly's or whatever, and that happened. Carly would have had the same reaction that Sam had. So again, that whole point is moot. At the end of the day, all it really was Carly sitting there finding a way to justify what she did, of dragging her kids into a dangerous life. Now, I mean, Carly, I'm not saying she's a terrible person, because she did sit there and say, like, listen, if you want to leave, I understand. I don't know. I mean, we can kind of look at this like, if you want to leave, I understand. Like, no, you're just guilt tripping them. You know that by you saying that. So, I don't know. I still kind of have mixed emotions about that whole thing, but I felt like it was just moot because nothing happened, It was like a bit of a filler, like a recap of what happened before with Taggart's alive and I lied to you and, whatever. And then it just went into full-blown filler. it wasn't terrible filler. I've seen worse, so it wasn't terrible. And you know, there's a lot of questions that go in my mind about the whole conversation that they're having, and you know, I could sit there and think about, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really that important to the grand scheme of everything. But like I said, it was a really good episode, and I can't wait until Monday. GH has actually been on fire lately. I gotta sit there and say GH has been on fire, and Days has been on fire too. Into today's episode, I don't know what the hell they were doing, but they're gonna get back on fire. So I got confidence in that. And with that being said, so I heard a rumor that's somewhat confirmed that they're working on it. For anybody who is, or at one point was, All My Children fans, well, they're talking about doing a spinoff called Pine Valley. I'm interested, but I'm also kind of hesitant about it. Indulge me for like, I don't know, a minute or so. So, early 2000s, late, mid 2000s or whatever, 2012 or whatever, you know, soap operas ratings weren't really doing so well. A lot of them were getting canceled left and right. And I believe it's because everything turned into a soap opera. Everything now, you know, there was a documentary about soap operas or whatever, and somebody was like, you know, a lot of these shows' foundations are built off of soap operas. And I look at stuff like CW shows, the superhero shows, like The Flash, even The Boys. And I always find elements from that to soap operas. You know, when you think about it, a soap opera and a regular drama, like even like The Desperate Housewives, isn't really that far off. You have romance, you have drama, you have action, you thriller, suspense. All that stuff is in a soap opera. You're just calling it by a different name. So, I mean, with that being said, everything's a soap opera now. Them bringing back All My Children sounds great on paper, and it sounds great to the fans, but at the end of the day, there's so much stuff that's soap operas that you don't have to sit there and constantly tune in. You could just watch 20 episodes, like This Is Us, and get the same thing without them constantly sitting there refreshing people's memories, changing characters. As much as I love soap operas, how I started off watching One Life to Live. Then Port Charles, and then got me into General Hospital. But as excited as I am for it, I'm also like, man, I hope this works. Because if it works, it's great. You know, they can bring back so many other shows. Oh, they can bring back One Life to Live. I love that show. You know, if they kill off Franco for whatever odd reason, it'd be great to have Todd back. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think about, you know, if you actually liked All My Children. You know, are you cool? Or like, are you excited for a possible, you know, reboot or whatever? Or soft reboot, I guess? And what you thought of today's episode? I just... It was so good, and at the same time, I was like, man, Julian, you couldn't do right by your family on your dying breath. I don't know if that's just a middle finger to the fans that love Julian, that were fans of Julian, or just like, I don't know. I feel like I have more to say, but I don't want this to really be too long, because it's already probably, long as it is. Yep, I said everything. So I hope everyone has a great weekend. Let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. So good. So good.